The year was 1865, and the frontier stretched wide as eternity, a land carved by dust, blood, and the stubborn will of those who refuse to be tamed. The sun hung low over the plains, bleeding orange light across a horizon that seemed to burn at the edges. A lone rider moved through that blaze, his horse's hooves sinking into the cracked earth, stirring ghosts from the dry wind. Elijah Crow rode without speaking, his eyes hidden beneath the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat, his mind somewhere far behind him, among smoke and screams he couldn't forget. He had once worn a blue coat and carried a flag he no longer believed in. Now, he wore the same dust as the dead. The war had ended for most men, but not for him. His war rode with him, stitched into the lining of his silence. Each mile between him and the battlefield should have brought peace. Instead, it carried the weight of names he couldn't remember and faces he couldn't forget. Ahead, a lonely trading post rose from the earth like a splinter of civilization stabbed into wilderness. Its wooden walls creaked beneath the wind, and the tattered flag that hung from the porch barely stirred. Elijah reined in his horse, scanning the horizon one last time before dismounting. The plains were quiet, too quiet. He tied his horse to the rail and stepped onto the warped planks of the porch. Inside, the smell hit him first: tobacco smoke, spilled whiskey, and the faint tang of sweat that clung to men who'd seen too much and said too little. The barkeep barely looked up. "You looking to drink or to forget?" "Depends what costs less," Elijah said. His voice carried the gravel of a man who'd swallowed too much road dust. He tossed a coin on the counter, the kind that no longer meant much this far from law or mercy. The barkeep slid a glass toward him. Men whispered in the corners, traders, drifters, bounty hunters. He caught bits of talk between gulps and grunts. Rumors of new gold strikes. Bandits along the river. And worse, Cheyenne raids near the borderlands. Elk River outpost burned last week, one man muttered. Army says the tribes are gathering again. Another spat tobacco into a tin can. Can't blame 'em. We keep pushing, they keep fighting. Ain't no end to it. Elijah drank in silence, pretending not to listen. He had learned long ago that the West was built on half-truths and whole lies. Still, when he heard the name Cheyenne, something twisted in his gut. A memory surfaced uninvited. The night sky lit with fire, the sound of crying that no bullet could silence. He shoved it back down and set his empty glass on the counter. "I'll be needin' supplies," he said, "and a fresh horse if you got one fit for the trail." The barkeep squinted. "Trail to where?" "Don't matter." The man shrugged and nodded toward the door. "Head north. You'll find open land and empty graves. Only fool ridin' that way now'd be looking to die." Elijah almost smiled. "Ain't we all?" By the time he stepped outside, the sun had fallen behind the hills. A bitter wind swept across the open plain, whispering through the fence posts. He mounted up and turned his horse north, away from light and laughter, toward the edge of the world. The sky deepened to crimson, then to black. Stars began to spark in the emptiness above. He'd ridden an hour when he saw it, a flicker of movement against the dying light. Someone was watching him from the ridge. He slowed, hand resting on the worn grip of his revolver. The figure didn't move. The wind carried a faint rattle, beads or feathers. Not a soldier, not a settler. He urged his horse forward, careful and slow, until the shape came clear, a woman standing tall against the horizon. Her hair caught the wind like a banner, black as night, her skin dusted with the color of the land itself. She wore leather fringed with bone and beads, a knife strapped to her thigh. Her eyes, dark and steady, met his with neither fear nor welcome. "Evenin'," Elijah called, voice low but even. No reply. He stopped a few yards away, keeping his hands visible. Didn't mean to trespass. Still nothing. Then, in halting English, she said, "You ride on sacred ground." Elijah glanced around at the barren hills. "Can't say I saw any sign." "You see now." Her tone was sharp, and her hand hovered near the knife. He studied her. Young but not fragile. Her stance spoke of training, grace balanced with danger. "I don't want trouble," he said. "Then leave." He might have, had the air not suddenly changed. From behind him came the faint thunder of horses, distant but closing fast. He turned in his saddle. Dust rose on the horizon, glinting with sunlight off metal. Cavalry riders, 3, maybe 4. Soldiers, he muttered. The woman's eyes narrowed. They hunt. For you. For anyone breathing. She turned away, already moving toward the canyon. Elijah hesitated, only a second before spurring his horse after her. The soldiers' shouts carried over the wind, commands barked, rifles cocked. He followed her into a narrow ravine, shadows swallowing them whole. The sound of hoofbeats echoed like gunfire against the rock walls. They stopped where the canyon widened into a small clearing. A stream trickled through stones, glinting under moonlight. She crouched beside it, listening. "You know this land," he said. "It knows me," she replied. "You are not safe here." "Neither are you." Her gaze shifted to him, studying his worn coat, the gun at his side, the haunted lines around his eyes. "You fought in the blue," she said quietly. He nodded once. Her expression hardened. "You burned villages." He looked away. "I did what I was told. Then you are like them." "Maybe," he said, voice dry as the wind. "But I'm not one of them anymore." They stood in silence, the distance between them heavy with things neither could unsay. The horses shifted restlessly, sensing the tension. Finally she spoke. "Go back south. Forget this place." "I can't," he said. "There's nowhere left to go." She looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing the truth in his words. Then she turned away, disappearing into the dark with a whisper of leather and wind. Elijah remained where she'd stood, the air still warm with her presence. He felt the pull of something he couldn't name, fear, regret, or the faint stirrings of hope. Above, lightning split the horizon, silent and distant. The storm was coming. He looked north, where the plains stretched endless and unforgiving. Somewhere out there, the past was waiting for him in the shape of a woman who should have hated him. He touched the scar on his shoulder, an old wound that still burned in the rain. The horse stamped, uneasy. Elijah took one last look toward the ridge where her shadow had vanished. Then he whispered to the wind, as if she might hear him still. "Maybe I deserve what's coming to—" The thunder answered him, low and long, rolling across the open land like a promise. The storm broke at dawn. Rain fell in thin, cold lines across the canyon, turning dust to clay and silence to whispers. Elijah Crow stirred beneath the shallow overhang that had sheltered him through the night, the ache in his bones matching the gray of the sky. He hadn't seen the woman since she vanished into the darkness, but her image clung to him like smoke, those eyes sharp and steady, the way she moved with the quiet certainty of someone who belonged to the land. He told himself it didn't matter. Yet he hadn't left. He saddled his horse slowly, pausing when the animal's ears flicked toward the ridge. A sound carried through the rain, hoofbeats, fast and uneven. He reached for his revolver, eyes narrowing. The first rider broke through the mist, wearing a tattered brown duster and a grin that didn't belong to a friend. 2 more followed, rifles glinting beneath the gray light. "Well, I'll be damned," the leader drawled, sliding from his horse. "Elijah Crow, as I live and breathe. Didn't think I'd find you this far west." Elijah said nothing. His stomach tightened as he recognized the man, Jonas Pike, once a bounty hunter, now something worse. Pike flicked the rein from his hat. "You've got a price on your head, Crow. Dead or alive, don't make no difference to me." The second man laughed, lifting his rifle. "Looks like dead would save us the trouble." Elijah's hand twitched toward his holster. The next second was a blur of motion. 3 shots cracked through the canyon. One bullet grazed Elijah's sleeve, another split rock behind him. He dove behind a boulder, mud splattering his coat. Pike cursed, reloading. Then came a new sound, sharp and clean, the whistle of an arrow cutting through rain. One of Pike's men stumbled forward, clutching his chest, the shaft buried deep. The other spun, startled. Another arrow found its mark, silent and sure. From the ridge above, she appeared again, Aiyana. Her bow was drawn, eyes fierce beneath streaks of war paint. She moved like the storm itself, loosing arrows until the last of Pike's men turned tail and fled. Pike fired back, missed, and ran for his horse. Elijah raised his revolver, fired once. The echo swallowed the rain. Pike fell face-first into the mud. When it was over, the canyon breathed again. Elijah holstered his gun, chest rising and falling. Aiyana climbed down, bow still in hand, every movement deliberate. "You kill easy," she said, voice flat. He met her eyes. "I've had practice." She studied him for a moment, then looked to Pike's body. "They hunted me yesterday. Now they hunt you. Why?" Elijah bent down, pulling a crumpled paper from the dead man's pocket. His face stared back at him from the wanted poster, the ink smudged but the words clear. "Elijah Crow, treason, murder, theft. Guess the past ain't done chasing me," he said. Aiyana's gaze softened only slightly. "The past never stops." He nodded, folding the paper and tucking it away. "Seems we're both being hunted." She hesitated, then said, "I go north, to my people. The soldiers march to the valley. They will burn it. And what do you expect me to do? Ride with me. You know their ways, their weapons." Elijah gave a dry laugh. "Lady, I've done enough riding for one lifetime." Her expression didn't change. "Then you run. Like them." She turned away, already walking into the rain. He almost let her go. Almost. But something in the way she carried herself, proud, defiant, alone, cut through the fog that had clouded his soul for years. "Wait," he called. She stopped, half-turned, the wind tugging at her hair. "If I go with you and I see soldiers again, I can't promise I'll shoot straight." "Then die crooked," she said. "But die doing something that matters." He smiled despite himself. "You've got a hell of a tongue, you know that?" She ignored the remark. "We ride before the ground turns to flood." And so they did. By noon, the rain had faded to mist. They followed a narrow trail that cut through cedar and rock, the world around them glistening under a silver sky. The air smelled of wet pine and ash. Their horses moved carefully along the ridges, hooves splashing through puddles that mirrored the clouds above. They spoke little. Elijah learned she was Aiyana, daughter of Chief Koa, killed when the Union burned their camp 2 winters ago. She sought her surviving kin near the Elk River, hoping to warn them before the soldiers returned. "And you," she asked, "what do you seek?" Elijah stared at the horizon. "Forgiveness, I suppose." "Forgiveness is not given. It is earned." He nodded. "Guess that's what I'm riding for." As the hours passed, their silence grew comfortable, edged with wary respect. At a shallow stream, Aiyana dismounted to fill her canteen. Elijah watched her reflection ripple in the water, strong, unbending, yet burdened by loss. He saw in her what he'd lost in himself, purpose. When night fell, they made camp under a canopy of firs. The fire crackled low, sending thin smoke into the dark. Aiyana sat across from him, carving symbols into a strip of bark with her knife. Elijah cleaned his revolver, hand steady, eyes distant. "You fought at Red Mesa," she said suddenly. His grip tightened. "How'd you know?" "Your eyes." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "I didn't light that fire, if that's what you think." "But you did not stop it." "No," he admitted softly. "I didn't." For a while, only the fire spoke. Then she said, "When I was a child, my father told me there are 2 kinds of hearts, the kind that kills to survive, and the kind that survives so others may live. You still have a choice." He almost laughed, but couldn't. Her words struck deeper than he cared to show. "You really believe that?" "I have to." The wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain and something else, smoke. Elijah rose instantly, scanning the dark. Far off, orange flickers danced against the horizon. "Campfire?" he asked. Aiyana shook her head. "No, soldiers." They doused their fire and packed quickly. As they mounted up, lightning flashed over the plains, revealing dark shapes moving across the valley, wagons, torches, rifles gleaming. "They move faster than I thought," she whispered. Elijah glanced at her, then at the endless stretch of darkness ahead. "We'll cut through the river gorge by dawn. It's risky, but it'll keep us out of sight." She hesitated. "You know that path?" He smirked faintly. I've been running long enough to learn all the bad roads. They rode hard through the night, the ground slick and treacherous. Once, Elijah's horse stumbled near a drop, nearly throwing him, but Aiyana's hand caught his arm, steadying him. Their eyes met in the moonlight, a flash of trust in a world that had forgotten the word. When they finally stopped, breathless and soaked, they were high above the valley. The wind howled, carrying the faint echo of drums from the plains below. Aiyana turned to him, her face half shadow, half light. Tomorrow we reach the Elk River. If they come, we fight. Elijah nodded, rain dripping for his hat. Then I reckon tomorrow decides what kind of heart I've got left. Her gaze lingered on him, unreadable. We will see. Below them, lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the vast wilderness they were about to enter, a land unkind to both sinners and saints. The storm was behind them now, but another one waited ahead, and neither could tell which would be the one to break them. The night was still except for the crackle of dying embers and the distant howl of a coyote. Cole sat near the fire, his hat tipped low, the silver star of the night sky gleaming against his weathered face. Across from him, Aiyana moved quietly, gathering her bow and rewrapping the leather binding around its grip. The tension between them had settled into something unspoken, neither peace nor war, but something rawer, more fragile. The firelight cast shadows on her face, fierce and soft all at once, like the land itself, dangerous and alive. Cole finally broke the silence. "Come dawn, we ride separate," he said. His voice was steady, though it cost him more than he'd admit. Aiyana didn't look up. "You'll die alone," she murmured. "Men like you always do." He gave a dry laugh, though it held no humor. "Maybe, but I'll die with my boots on. Can't say the same for many these days." She glanced toward him then, eyes reflecting the firelight, eyes that had seen loss and vengeance and mercy in equal measure. "You still think it's about dying with pride," she said. "It's about living with purpose." The words cut deeper than any bullet could. Cole looked away, toward the horizon where dawn would soon bleed across the plains. The world out there was vast and cruel and beautiful, and for a fleeting moment, he wondered what it would have been like to ride beside her instead of against her. But morning came, as it always did, pale and cold. By the time the first light touched the valley, they were already in the saddle. The trail led north toward the Black River, where the outlaw McGraw and his men had taken refuge. Cole knew it would end there. Whether in redemption or ruin, he couldn't tell. As they rode, the wind carried whispers of something heavy, thunder, or perhaps the drums of an approaching storm. Aiyana's horse moved like water beside his, and though neither spoke, there was an understanding between them now. They had fought together, bled together, and though their paths would soon part, the frontier had bound them in ways words could never untangle. By noon, the ridge overlooking the river came into view. Smoke curled faintly from below. Campfire smoke, lazy but unmistakable. McGraw's camp. Cole's jaw tightened. "There," he said quietly. Aiyana dismounted first, scanning the valley with a hunter's precision. "Too open," she whispered. "If you ride in now, you'll be dead before you reach the water." "I've come too far to crawl," he said, but even as he spoke he knew she was right. He'd chased McGraw for months, across rivers, through storms, over the bones of friends, and now that justice was within reach, his blood burned too hot for caution. Aiyana turned to him, her voice low but sharp. "You want revenge. I want balance. There's a difference." He stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "Balance won't bring back what's gone," he said. "No," she answered softly, "but revenge won't fill what's empty." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of smoke and gunpowder. The camp below stirred, voices rising, laughter echoing off the rocks. Cole tightened the strap on his holster. "Then balance or not," he said, "this ends today." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Then we end it together." They moved like shadows through the rocks, the world narrowing to breath and heartbeat. The outlaws lounged near the riverbank, guns slung loose, the arrogance of men who believe they own death. Cole recognized McGraw. Instantly, the scar down his cheek, the grin that had haunted him since Redwater. He stepped from behind the rocks, revolver drawn. "McGraw!" His voice rang out like thunder. The camp froze. Then chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked through the air. Cole dropped behind a boulder, returning fire with steady precision. Aiyana moved beside him, arrows slicing the air, finding their marks before the outlaws could even reload. The fight was a blur of noise and fury. Shouts, dust, the sharp sting of lead grazing skin. Cole caught sight of McGraw, running toward the riverbank, rifle in hand. He fired once, missed. The outlaw spun, firing back, the bullet shattering the rock inches from Cole's head. "Go!" Aiyana shouted, loosing another arrow that struck a man clean through the chest. Cole ran. The ground was slick with mud, the air thick with smoke. McGraw turned at the water's edge, snarling. "You should have stayed in Redwater, boy." Cole didn't answer. He fired again, once, twice. The second shot hit home. McGraw staggered, dropped his knees, and fell forward into the river. For a moment, there was only silence. The smoke hung low, curling like ghosts over the battlefield. Aiyana approached slowly, her bow still raised. "It's done," she said. Cole looked down at the body, drifting in the shallows. "No," he murmured. "It's never done." He holstered his gun, his hands trembling despite himself. The adrenaline drained away, leaving only the ache of everything he'd lost and everything he'd found in the woman beside him. They stood there as the river carried the past downstream. The sky began to clear, streaks of gold breaking through the clouds. Aiyana reached into her satchel and drew out a small token, a carved feather bone, and pressed it into his palm. "For your journey," she said. He looked at it, then at her. "And what about yours?" She smiled faintly. "Mine began long before I met you." He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. The wind caught her hair, carrying the scent of sage and smoke as she turned toward the hills. "Aiyana," he called after her. "If I ever ride south again, then maybe," she said, not turning back, "the spirits will let you find me." She disappeared into the horizon, swallowed by the endless plains. Cole stood alone, the feather clutched tight in his hand. The sun dipped low, setting the river ablaze with light, and in that glow he felt something shift, something like peace or maybe just exhaustion. He mounted his horse slowly, his shadow long against the earth. The frontier stretched before him, wild, unforgiving, endless. He'd set out chasing vengeance and found something far rarer, a glimpse of what it meant to forgive. As he rode away, the wind carried his whisper across the plains. A cowboy's heart, a warrior's spirit, one unforgettable encounter. The story ends, but the dust never settles. The West remembers, and as the screen fades to black, a voice, steady, reflective, rises against the quiet. So what do we take from this tale? Maybe it's this: the frontier wasn't just a place, but a test of will. And sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with guns, but with the heart. Then softly, if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.